Hello and welcome everybody to today's webinar titled VO2 Max Equipment, the best high-tech investment for your gym. It is now my pleasure to introduce our speakers for today. First up, Julie Kofed, VP of KORR Medical Technologies. Julie K. Kofed is KORR Medical Technologies Vice President of Marketing. Before joining KORR, Julie spent more than a decade as an acute care registered nurse. This gives her an in-depth understanding of KORR's products and a connection to healthcare professionals. Her additional education in public relations and graphic design, as well as time spent as a lobbyist, brings a unique blend of skills that has benefited KORR. Julie graduated with a bachelor's degree in nursing from the University of Utah in 1988. Our next speaker for today is Jody K. Nelson, BS in Exercise Science. Jody K. Nelson specializes in VO2 max testing, exercise, nutrition, and wellness. With a bachelor's degree in exercise science from Utah Valley University, she brings a wealth of knowledge to KORR. Jody enjoys running, hiking, skiing, and boating, and can often be found enjoying her husband Trey and baby girl Ryan. Thank you so much for being here with us today, ladies. Julie, if you're ready, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Robin, and thanks for that nice introduction. And I also want to thank Ursa for giving us the opportunity to talk about something that is really a passion for both Jody and I. So the learning objectives of this webinar is to help each listener understand what is VO2 max, how is testing performed, why is it important to test clients, and what can VO2 max add to my programs. So if this isn't what you were intending to learn about today, now is the time to bail. I say that kind of facetiously, but I have a darling son who's a freshman in college, and he attended a class for 3 weeks before he realized that it was not Introduction to Medicine. It was actually Introduction to Dentistry. So it happens to the best of us. So let's begin by defining VO2 max. VO2 max is defined as the oxygen uptake attained during maximal exercise intensity that defines the limits of the cardiorespiratory system. And we measure this by determining the amount of oxygen a person consumes while increasing their workload until they reach a maximum effort. This is a test, but then the next question is, how is it scored? What is a VO2 max score? It's millimeters of oxygen per kilogram of body mass per minute that the body is consuming. That breaks down to milliliters per kilogram per minute. So this question of scoring reminds me of an experience I had a couple of years ago. We went up to New York as KORR was asked to test all the NHL hockey recruits in their combine. And these boys just poured themselves into these tests. They gave an effort that was unbelievable. And then they would stagger off the ice and pass me. And invariably, as they passed each other, I could hear them say, "Dude, what was your time?" And I kind of had to giggle and scratch my head because time has nothing to do with a VO2 max test result. And so it was an odd question for me to hear them ask. That milliliters per kilogram per minute is going to result in a number that's going to range somewhere from 0 to 100. And that is your unique score, totally unique to you. And what it tells you is what your body's capacity is to perform and keep performing, whether that performance is as a professional hockey player or if it's playing ball with your kids or even if you're just cleaning your house. So what is a good VO2 max score? Well, Lance Armstrong has publicly posted a VO2 max of 74. That's a really good score. I've seen scores from Olympic cross-country skiers that push 90, which is like unbelievable. My little hockey recruits, their scores ranged from 41 to 70, and they were in quite good shape. For an untrained person, they will score somewhere between 25 and 40. So the beauty about a VO2 max score is it can be a great tool to train athletes. If someone has a low score, VO2 training has been shown to as much as double that score. So you end up with a measurable number that then you can shoot for and monitor as someone makes progress. So they're seeing improvements not just by how they feel and an improved quality of life and improved performance. You can actually put it on a chart and measure that improvement. So consider what you know about VO2 max testing, and you might ask yourself, does this even belong in a gym, or does it need to stay in the lab? And it may seem that this is beyond the needs technically. You look at this guy, and he's got the EKG wires coming out, and he's got the big old harness on, and there's the man in the lab coat who's assessing the results, and it seems way technical. And I don't blame you if you have those thoughts of why do I need this, especially since the price tag has traditionally been starting at $40,000 for a cart like this. But this isn't the case anymore. Back in the late 1980s, the founders of KORR, Drs. Kofed and Orr, received a grant from NASA, and that grant was to get metabolic testing in the space station. And in order to do that, they needed to make it portable and have a more simplified, easy to connect with user interface. And the result was the cardio coach. So because it's so streamlined, it's actually much cheaper to manufacture. And so the starting point, price point of a cardio coach is around $6,000, which is a far cry from the $40,000 that has been seen so many years. But just because it's priced less than a treadmill doesn't justify your purchase, I'm sure. So why should you make this investment? And I'm going to start out with 3 reasons. Trainers are competing in a really interesting environment right now because more often they're not necessarily competing against other trainers for the attention of clients. They're more often they're competing with virtual competitors. Meaning, think of the monitors that clients are buying to monitor their activity around their wrist, the apps that they've downloaded on their phone, websites that make wild claims for what they can do for people. And the problem is these companies have huge budgets, they're savvy about marketing, and worst of all, they don't have to substantiate their claims. And so our trainers are at a significant disadvantage at times, and it's more important than ever to give them the best tools they can because they're really competing against virtual giants. We all know that initial assessment is the first step to starting a fitness program of any kind. If you start someone at too high a rate and intensity, they will likely fatigue, get sore, maybe even have injuries that will discourage them and keep them from coming back. If you start them at too low an intensity, they're not likely to see results. And again, it becomes hard for them to come back. You have to know where you are to map out where you want to go and how to get there. And when it comes to cardiovascular health, a VO2 max is the undisputed gold standard of assessments. So what do customers expect? I don't have to tell you that the competition for customers is fierce. And with everything that facilities are doing to get their attention, surveys show that the most important thing to customers is feeling like they matter. And so a personalized attention is key. You've got to remember that customers are sizing you up the minute they walk in the front door. And that fitness assessment is probably going to be your first opportunity to have some real one-on-one time with a client. So picture what they're going to see. Are they going to see you or your trainer walk to them with a clipboard and a measuring tape in their hand? Or are you going to be able to offer them the same kind of assessments that an MBA star gets? This new customer's first impression is going to be this interface, and just like a first date, you never have a second chance to make a first impression. So let's get down to specifics. How do you conduct a test? Let's see. First of all, you have a mask. You fit the mask to their face. and make sure you have a good seal. And then you wrap a heart rate strap around their chest and make sure that you're getting a good heart rate pickup. Once those two things are in place, then you connect it to the equipment through the mask hose. You're ready to go right there. You start them on a graded exercise test, which means you start from a slow walk and push them until they say they can't go anymore. At that point, you stop the test and the analyzer measures the oxygen consumed. It really is just that easy. So what information does a test give you? This is the actual printout from one of our CardioCoach devices. You'll notice that across the middle there are colored boxes. Those are the workout zones that have been calculated based on the test. So it's based on anaerobic threshold, aerobic threshold, VO2 max, and calculates these workout zones. Now, I know you've all seen zones before, but these are truly personalized to the person just tested. When I talk about this, I remember being at IRSA a couple years ago, and there was a speaker who had spent 20 years as an executive at a major treadmill company. And in his talk, he revealed how the treadmill companies calculated their zones. Every treadmill that left their factory had their zones calculated on a 35-year-old half male, half female, 150-pound person. I'm like, seriously. I know I've seen some quirky people walking around my gym, but I've never seen that person. So with metrics like that, I don't know how you could ever trust the data to produce meaningful results. So above those zones, you can see some colored print in a little table, and that shows at what heart rate you're burning, how many calories you're burning at each heart rate within these zones. So that's where you can look to make sure that your client is being most effective burning calories when they work out. And then down here at the bottom is your client can compare themselves to the averages. So, is their fitness level, average or fair, excellent, superior, etc. KORR also uploads our results to a custom app. And this app will both show the results and then also has a huge advantage of being able to push those results into workouts. And so your client can go through workouts and the app will guide them and indicate you need to go faster or you need to slow down in order to keep them in the right zone at the right time to get whatever workout you've prescribed for them. So both the workout and the app display the actual results that are measured. And so I'm going to let Jody, as our expert, define each of these values and then also share with us how they can be used in training.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Julie. I appreciate it. So the first topic we're going to touch on when discussing results is VO2 max. So knowing your client's VO2 max lets us know how efficient their body is at utilizing oxygen. And as a client's cardiorespiratory condition improves, so will their VO2 max. So this can be used as a marker for improvement. A lot of people actually already do training to improve their VO2 max without even knowing it. For example, the point of an interval workout is to increase your max capacity. By alternating between a high intensity that you can't sustain for too long and resting at a moderate intensity between bouts, your body is pushed to max capacity repeatedly where every component in exercise metabolism is saturated and working as hard and as fast as it can. So consistently implementing interval training can force the body to adapt and increase its max capacity to accommodate that stress. As far as mechanically how the machine is measuring this, Julie did touch on the flow of the testing as far as the test administration side, and that is very, very simple. How the machine actually gathers the oxygen consumption measurement is also very simple. So before every single test, the machine will do a calibration where it will draw ambient air from the room and it will take a series of measurements. One of those measurements is the percentage of oxygen. So before every test, it will calibrate, it knows the percentage of oxygen in the room, and then as the test is going, the client is hooked up to a mask that forces all their expired air to be exhaled into the unit. So we know the percentage of oxygen in the room, we know the percentage of oxygen that the client breathes back into the machine for measurement, and so based on that deficit, we can see what percentage of oxygen their body is actually utilizing and hanging on to. So that point is going to vary depending on if they're at rest, if they're at a low intensity, if they're at a moderate intensity, at a high intensity. So as the test is going, the machine is constantly taking measurements so that it can see exactly how many liters or milliliters of oxygen that individual is utilizing, so we can correlate that to heart rates throughout the test. So we're doing a graded exercise test, we can know exactly their oxygen consumption point and correlate that to the heart rate that they're at each point. So with VO2 max test results, your body has to burn a certain number of calories in order to utilize oxygen. So for example, at rest, you have to burn approximately 4.8 calories to utilize a liter of oxygen. So since we know exactly their volume of oxygen utilization, we can then calculate how many calories their body is burning at varying oxygen consumption levels as they go through their graded exercise test. So by viewing calories burned throughout the levels of the graded exercise test, you can see where a client is burning the most calories for their effort. It's interesting, when Julie was touching on just kind of the funny quirks of how a treadmill is trying to determine how many calories you're burning. I have friends on social media that will post their workouts when they're completed, and they'll take a picture of the treadmill screen when it's done. So it'll say that they worked out for 35 minutes, and it will show their average speed or average incline, and then it will say 600 or 800 calories, where you look at that and you see that their average speed was 4 miles an hour, and you would think, man, you would have to be a very efficient individual in order to burn such a high number of calories, when in reality, it's just not accurate. So we are looking at exactly what your body is utilizing to determine how many calories they are actually burning. So it's a customizable number based off of the individual's oxygen consumption. So one benefit of the Cardio Coach app is that after the test results are imported into the app, the client can wear a Bluetooth-compatible heart rate strap to track their heart rate during their workout. So based on the heart rate and correlating VO2, the app calculates how many calories they're burning in real time, which makes the real-world application of these test results much easier for a client to implement. So the next topic I want to discuss is anaerobic threshold. So anaerobic threshold, or AT, is the point where, due to the exercise intensity, aerobic metabolism essentially can't keep up with the demand for energy production, and lactate accumulates exponentially in the blood as a result. This is when your muscles struggle to keep up with the workload and where the soreness comes from after a workout. So AT is a very important data point to be aware of, especially for an athlete who is trying to fine-tune their performance. Knowing the cap-off point of their aerobic capacity can let them know where to train to increase their aerobic capacity. Earlier I mentioned interval training to increase our VO2 max. Well, we can also do training to specifically improve our anaerobic threshold. For example, exercising right on the cusp of this threshold for an extended period puts a stress on your body where it is having to toggle back and forth between energy systems. The usefulness of knowing anaerobic threshold is that you can train to increase that threshold by doing modified interval training that alternates from just under AT to just above it. This can progressively force your body to adapt to increase its anaerobic threshold and therefore increase both speed and endurance.
Everyone can train to increase their VO2 max, but our body is not capable of an unlimited volume of oxygen consumption. Unfortunately, genetics does play a partial role in how high we can get our VO2 max with training, but what can give an athlete a competitive advantage, especially if they seem to have gotten their VO2 max as high as possible with training, is they can do threshold training. So they may have a lower VO2 max than their competitor, but if their AT is a higher percentage of their max capacity and their VO2 at their anaerobic threshold is greater than their competitor, then that gives them the advantage, where their body has been conditioned to still operate aerobically despite being at a more difficult intensity. So keep that in mind. Just because someone has a higher VO2 max than you, it does not mean that there is nothing else that you can do. So the third topic I want to touch on is RER. So RER is an abbreviation for respiratory exchange ratio, and this is a ratio of carbon dioxide produced in metabolism versus oxygen utilized. This measurement is extremely significant because it lets us know where the fuel is coming from to support the effort. As your body becomes less efficient at utilizing oxygen, the ratio of carbon dioxide over oxygen consumption will increase. So when we reference fuel, we are talking about fat versus carbohydrate. This measurement can be taken in congruence with an RMR test or a VO2 max test. So we can see how efficient they are at utilizing fat versus carbohydrate, both at rest and during exercise. So RER allows us to see where a client is most efficient and where that efficiency decreases, making workouts less effective for their goals. So understanding not only how many calories you are using, but particularly what makes up those calories is huge. The competitive athlete will want to evaluate at what point they are using up carbohydrate stores so that they can factor in refueling. They may also want to engage in metabolic efficiency training to make dietary adjustments to improve their use of fat as fuel. The client who values weight loss will want to know at what point they are burning the most fat for their effort. If they kill themselves in a workout and are only using carb stores for fuel, their weight loss goals will not be met, and there's a potential for overtraining or burning out. So we like to call this principle working out smarter, not harder, where you don't have to work out and kill yourself at such a high intensity in order to meet your weight loss goals. If anything, it's going to be the opposite of that. And taking this test and utilizing these results can help us pinpoint that most effective point, that most effective heart rate to meet their goals. So this next graph charts RER in a way that is easy to reference. So typically when we talk about RER, it is on a scale of 0.7 to 1.0. Again, just to remind you, this is looking at the ratio between oxygen consumption and CO2 exhaled into the unit. So you can see on this chart that there are data points missing. So just know that every point in between 0.7 and 1.0 has an associated fat versus carbohydrate utilization percentage. You can see at 0.7, we are utilizing 100% fat to fuel the effort, and 1.0 means we are utilizing 100% carbohydrate to fuel the effort. So every point in between is a percentage of fat versus carbohydrate, and 0.85 is our 50-50 point, just to kind of give you a reference, since it's not a normal 1 to 100 scale. 0.7 to 1.0 is the total scale. We can see RER go slightly below, and it will go above 1.0, especially at very high intensities. But again, generally, when we reference RER, it is on a scale of 0.7 to 1.0. So just like the Cardio Coach app is able to calculate how many calories are burned during a workout, we are also able to use the RER data to calculate how many calories are coming from fat versus carbohydrate, respectively. So, for example, if a client burns 300 calories during their workout, they can reference that 120 calories came from fat and 180 calories came from carbohydrate. So this combination of data can be used to fine-tune any health programming goals, whether they are specific to weight loss or an athlete trying to pinpoint how they can improve their performance. So we use the VO2 max data, the VO2 data to pinpoint how many calories we're burning, and then the RER data to look at where the fuel is coming from to support the effort that makes up those calories. Okay, so the next results topic I want to touch on is RMR. So RMR is an abbreviation for resting metabolic rate. You may also see it as REE, resting energy expenditure, but it's how many calories the client's body needs to maintain baseline function, to maintain baseline metabolic function. So most often trainers and nutritionists will use predictive formulas to determine caloric needs. And while this may work for some clients, more than 40% will have caloric baselines that are significantly different. So what does that mean? It means that you may unwittingly recommend too many calories, undermining weight loss efforts, or too few calories, which can leave a client feeling deprived and metabolically unhealthy. So using oxygen consumption at rest to determine resting caloric needs. So as far as how the test is administered, for a VO2 max test, Julie described how it's a graded exercise test on a piece of cardio equipment. We start them out slow and incrementally increase the effort over the course of the test until they're at their max effort. The RMR test is a lot more relaxed. It is a lot calmer. And so we will have the client sitting in a chair, relaxed, and they simply need to breathe and exhale all of their expired air into a hose that collects and measures inside the unit. So they just need to relax and breathe normally. So it's recommended that they avoid eating for at least 4 hours prior to the test. The very act of digesting food will actually raise their resting metabolic rate up to 15%. So they're relaxed, sitting in a chair, breathing normally, and the test the whole process usually takes up to 10 minutes. It can take around 10 minutes, so it's very, very short in duration. It doesn't take a lot for the client to do it, but it gives you a hard fact measurement that can immediately be applied for your client. Okay, so this last topic that I want to touch on regarding results is the body fat percentage. So body fat percentage, it's reverse calculated from lean body mass. So what this means is that because of the known rate that lean body mass burns calories, we can use metabolic rate to estimate lean body mass. So knowing lean body mass, we can then estimate what is left over, the fat mass. So this is actually an estimation based on your test results. So while the while the RMR tells you what to do, the body fat shows if the program is working, as does the mirror. So you can obviously see when you are looking at yourself in the mirror if your body is more toned, but a lot of times you can't look at it and gauge it off of a weight difference. So we can look at our resting metabolic rate, and we can look at, okay, based off of this calculation, is my lean body mass improving, and is my body fat percentage decreasing? Okay, let's see. So altogether, VO2, AT, RER, body fat percentage, and RMR, they all work together to help you as a test administrator create a well-rounded plan for your client that is taking into account how their body functions. So using FACT versus an online calculator to predict these data points gives them personalized results so that they can make changes based on what their body needs so that they can work out smarter, not harder. Okay, so that kind of wraps up what I wanted to touch on regarding results, and I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you, Julie.
Thanks, Jody. So for those of you listening, Jody is the one who organizes our training here at KORR, and you can, from what you've heard, I'm sure you can see she's very knowledgeable and we really appreciate how she works with our clients. She's effectively explained the what of all this. I'm going to come back to the why. We've talked a little bit about why, but we're going to talk about a little bit more here, because I can't talk about why in fitness without the three big R's: results, retention, and ROI. So results. You know that in order to keep a client coming back, they have to be seeing results. So with this in mind, I ask myself, how do clients measure success? Not necessarily us as trainers and owners, but how do the clients define whether this program is successful for them? So clients want to see or know that they're doing more than they used to. And this is where AT training makes a difference. Like Jody talked about, AT increases endurance, doing the interval training right around AT. And what that translates to is that you can do more before you wear out. And that's true whether you are playing ball with your kids and you can do it longer, whether you're hiking like this guy, he can hike longer and farther, or even you can do a longer day of yard work in your yard. Those are the kinds of things that clients are looking for. They want to know, am I burning fat? It's no longer about calories alone. It's about what kind of calories you're burning. And while increasing the intensity might give you the impression that you're burning more fat, there comes a point when you are burning carbs. Think back to that chart that Jody showed you. And because carbs are a fuel source that must be replenished, burning them often drives a person to eat more. And that just undermines, their attempts to lose weight. A VO2 max test is actually, with RER data, is actually the only way to determine the fuel sources that are being burned. Do I look better? Something like 80% of the people who join a gym have weight loss as their goal. And you can't exercise alone to lose weight. There's a saying I like that says you can't outrun a bad diet. So what are you going to do? By being able to add a metabolic rate test to their assessment, you actually start to understand their metabolism and what's going on with their body and why they may have had troubles in the past losing weight, and get them on a track to actual success. They want to know, has my race time improved? Every bit of data from a VO2 max can be used to train athletes. Like Jody explained, VO2 max will show improvements in cardiorespiratory fitness. AT training will improve their endurance, and RER data is key to understand refueling. Amateur racing has exploded in the last 10 years, and I know we've all seen it. SIFA reports that 2,200,000 triathletes competed in 2016. I read the other day, Men's Health said that triathlons are the new golf. I don't know what it's like in your hometown, but where I live, Saturday mornings, the roads are filled with cyclists that are out there just giving it their all. And so how can you, as a gym owner, capitalize on this trend? I would contend that VO2 max equipment gets you in the game. To even be a USTA certified facility, you have to have VO2 max equipment. It's required. I also see those cyclists and imagine how the cycle shop is a gold mine of potential clients for a gym. But one of their problems is they often, the amateurs at least, just ride out on the road as their only kind of training. So if you were to offer a VO2 max test, like in conjunction with a cycle shop, these cyclists are going to know what this test is because of people like Armstrong and Lamond. They understand what VO2 max is. They just maybe haven't had the opportunity to get a test. If you can capture them within a promotion to test, then you get them in your gym. And then while we're discussing the results, you or your trainers can then discuss with them the benefits of a more well-rounded training, like adding strength training or functional training, different things that will help them improve. And for that moment, you have a captive audience. Ultimately, they want to know, do I feel better? The way VO2 Max can help you with this is through the precise workout zones. Because those precise workout zones, one thing that's really effective is they will help avoid overtraining. People end up not feeling good even when they're working out at a gym if they keep continually stressing the same parts of their body and the same energy pathways. Most people, though, or many people, train day in and day out at the same heart rate, doing the same routine. And we're just creatures of habit, whether it's running, cycling, or even, walking your dog. So if you effectively utilize personalized zones, it'll allow you to push your clients to their peak at some intervals and then allow their bodies to recover at others while still achieving those maximum results you're trying to get. And then additionally, those zones follow them from the treadmill to the spin class, to body pump, to whatever other kinds of cardio you have at your gym, so you can encourage them to have a variety of workouts that are still just as effective and comfortable as they're seeking. So the diversity of people who walk through the doors of a gym is amazing, and I honestly think it's one of the things that makes the fitness industry a beautiful thing. But your challenge is to keep that door from becoming a revolving door. We all know it's cheaper to keep a client than to acquire new ones, and the most cost-effective thing is if your clients refer a friend and you get a happy referral. So I want you to ask yourself, am I staying current? The biggest trend right now in fitness undoubtedly is tracking biomarkers. Whether it's steps or sleep or calories, people are expecting data and they're expecting to track it. And the truth is we can track almost anything, but the fact that we can track it doesn't mean that it's necessarily useful. And that's something that we can help clients navigate. If you have VO2 max testing, you can keep yourself relevant with the trend of data and tracking, and you can help your clients kind of filter through all the hype of the things that are really just fads. So, how would you like a product that promotes itself? The printouts are such an effective thing. The printouts will sit on their refrigerator or on their nightstand, and not only is it helpful for the client because they continue to have that motivation, but I can guarantee you they're going to share that printout or the Cardio Coach app results with a friend, a coworker, family members, because it's interesting. It's interesting to talk about, even if it's not something to show off. It's interesting data, and people invariably share it. And you get advertising without having to produce a thing. So clients come into gyms with different goals, but they're all obviously looking for results to those goals. But there's no one-size-fits-all solution for any gym. I would just contend that the Cardio Coach meets the challenge of personalizing your programs. So it can be personal enough that each of these clients is on a better track to reach their goals. Our core customers have testimonials from their clients, often on their website, and I thought it was worth sharing one from a client named Shannon. So Shannon was a successful competitor in marathons throughout her teens. She competed at a fairly high rate and actually posted her best time at the Boston Marathon. But as the years progressed, Shannon left competition and she had 4 kids. Life happens. But in her 30s, she decided she was going to start competing again, but she was way off her mark. So she decided to get some training to get back in shape, and she hired Cameron Garber from Body Smart. So Cameron based her training regimen on VO2 max and RER data, and in less than a year, not only did Shannon qualify for Boston, she cut 25 minutes, 47 seconds off her previous best, basically cutting a minute off each mile. And this is after 4 kids. So I can guarantee you that Shannon will be a Body Smart customer for life. So ROI, the bottom line is we're all business owners and we have to figure out how to make a profit. And as we've talked about it, you may be saying to yourself, you know, this accuracy, this precision, that's kind of a luxury. And what I really need to do is pay the bills. And so using, you know, the estimates for this information is just going to have to do because I simply can't afford this economically. And that's where I'm going to try to adjust your thinking. VO2 max assessments are actually a revenue center. So you get better results and you get revenue. And I'll show you how here. So here I took the Cardio Coach Plus, which is our mid-level product, and plugged in 20 tests per month. That's 5 tests a week. That's quite a conservative estimate. I did it for both VO2 max here and RMR with a charge of $150 for the VO2 max and $50 for the RMR. And those are very typical rates that people charge. The gross proceeds both years is $48,000. And then, of course, we have to look at our cost of operation. I put in some staff fees to have some of your staff run the test. The equipment cost in the first year at $74.95. And then the additional equipment cost, this is what it says, MetaBreathers. That's the disposable valve and mouthpiece that we use for RMR testing. And those are thrown away after each use, so that is a cost to operate. Year 2, there is a service cost. It is the unit has to be calibrated and have an oxygen sensor replaced every couple of years, so I added that in as a cost of operation. What you see is that year 2, you have a significantly decreased cost of operation because obviously you've paid off your equipment. And so our annual cash flow in this scenario would be about $34,000 year 1 and about $41,000 year 2. So you may say, okay, Julie, that's just hypotheticals. You know, I don't know if I can really do that or get that kind of return. So I brought case studies. Our first case study is from Revolution in Chicago, Illinois. Revolution's been a KORR customer since 2012. They have 6 locations and 6 Cardio Coach devices. They charge $125 for VO2 max and $50 for RMR. Their total yearly revenue is $187,200. And they use, for marketing support, they offer a free test when purchasing 2 months of training. We're running low on time. I'll leave the quotes there from each of our owners for you to read if you go back to the slides later. The next one is LACROSSE Wellness Center from LaCrosse, Wisconsin. LACROSSE is a full-service gym. It's been a KORR customer since 2017. 1 location, 1 Cardio Coach device. VO2 max charge $125 as the same for RMR, and they report a total yearly revenue of $45,000. For marketing, they use it to test for weight loss challenges, corporate wellness, and booth displays. And here's Shane Doman, the owner, reports that he offers a $50 a month plan when he creates a 12-week cardio plan that is used in the app. And for $100 a month, the results are incorporated with group heart rate training. He adds that supplement sales often come from completing RMR tests with members. I'd like to point out in both of these, Revolution pushed people towards additional personal training packages, and LACROSSE is pushing people towards supplement sales, which adds additional revenue beyond just the testing itself. Fitness Formula Clubs in Chicago, Illinois has been KORR customer since 2013, 10 locations, and 2 Cardio Coach devices. This speaks to the portability of the device as they are using 2 devices and moving them between these 10 locations. They charge $149 for testing, and their total yearly revenue is $114,432. They use for marketing large-scale advertising, raffle testing at expos, and they run a metabolic roadshow every couple of weeks. Actually, the large-scale advertising, I've seen it. They wrapped the back of a bus, and you can be sitting in traffic in Chicago and have this intense face of an athlete with a mask on that is just staring you in the face. It's pretty impressive. Our last is REDKORE Fitness in Alpharetta, Georgia, a KORR customer since 2013. They have 2 locations and 2 cardio coaches and charge between $99 and $149 for a total yearly revenue of $42,000. Their marketing is they offer a discount on metabolic testing when an elite membership is purchased. I wanted to mention the marketing that all of these clubs use the cardio coach for. It can be sometimes daunting to think of having to come up with marketing when you launch a new program. And so KORR has provided a huge Dropbox with royalty-free photos, with pre-designed flyers, brochures, newspaper ads, posters, banners, suggestions of how to run programs and promotions, social media materials, etc., so that you can just take those things and get testing, get going. So in conclusion, I want to point out what Jody said about working smarter, not harder. We encourage that of our clients who are working out, but I would encourage you to think about that for yourself. Am I being smart? If you invest in VO2 technology, it is a smarter approach to training programs. So the clients will experience better results because they're in the right zone, they're working out where they're most effective, and you see results because you've got a revenue generator and you have the retention of those clients. And it truly is a win-win situation. So with that being said, Jody and I will take the next few minutes to answer some questions. Robin, do we have some that have come in?
Yes, Julie and Jody, thank you. I will jump right in here. The first question we have from the audience says, has the KORR Cardio Coach been compared to other brands of VO2 Max and RMR machines that are on the market?
Yes, on our website we have a couple of studies. One is by, I think it's Oregon State, another is by USC, and so they have done comparisons, yes.
Thank you. The next question says, nope, that's great. The next question says, do you have videos showing how to conduct the test and an explanation of the results from the reports produced by Cardio Coach?
Absolutely, and those are available to the public. If you go to our website, www.korr.com, under support, the support tab, it'll drop down with training, and you can see videos right there online.
Okay, the next question we have says, how does the interface with group heart rate training like MyZones?
Actually, the interface with MyZones is really quite seamless. Their heart rate belt is detected by our cardio coach, so clients can use their own heart rate monitor when they go to do a test. And then you take the results and simply upload the profile or update the profile within MyZones to the cardio coach zones that were detected during the test, and it will then adjust across the board the zones they're seeing when they work out. Really works quite well.
Great, thank you, Julie. The next question we have says, how comfortable are clients pushing themselves to complete exhaustion? Is it difficult to convince clients to push them to exhaustion so that the results are as accurate as possible?
So, Jody, do you want to explain a submax test to answer that question?
Yeah, so we don't necessarily have to push them to complete failure in order to have good usable data that can implement into good workout zones. Again, going back to what Julie mentioned about the workout zones, there's key points that we are measuring to make up the heart rate distribution on those. So it's the start of the test, the aerobic threshold, the anaerobic threshold, and the peak is used for the top end. But if we do not hit the peak, we can still use those first 3 data points. So if the peak is not achieved during the test, the software can extrapolate the heart rate up to their age-predicted max heart rate to accommodate for that top zone that they did not potentially reach their max capacity on. But it will still utilize the start of the test, the aerobic threshold, and the anaerobic threshold to still give you those usable heart rate ranges. So the only thing that it would be extrapolating is that peak heart rate for that last zone. So say that your age-predicted max heart rate is 180 beats per minute and the client only got to 170, it would just extrapolate that 10 beats per minute up for that very top zone.
Thank you, Jody. We did just have a few more questions come in. So the next question said, how is the tube going from the machine to the mask disinfected?
Do you want me to answer that one, Julie?
Sure.
So as far as cleaning the accessories, we just recommend warm soapy water, and that's for the hose, for the Y valve, for the mask. So for the hose, since you obviously can't reach down into it, you just fill a sink with warm soapy water, run it all the way through, and rinse and repeat the process until obviously there is not an odor or anything like that to make sure that it is disinfected properly. But as far as cross-contamination, nothing can come back up the hose via the one-way valves on the Y valve, so there is not a risk of cross-contamination if you don't clean the hose between back-to-back clients. So as long as you clean the mask and the Y valve, that should be sufficient if you have a high volume of clients that you do back-to-back testing on.
And I just want to add to that, that's the American Society of Respiratory Therapy gives these guidelines for cleaning this equipment. And so we have posted those guidelines with the scientific references for the cleaning on our website.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, will an older KORR unit be able to support newer software and app integration?
Within our product development, we always take care of our customers. So as new things are developed, we've made sure that existing customers can use it, and that will continue to be our pattern as we move forward.
Okay. The next question is, what is the cost for the 3 different cardio coach models?
Currently, I can give kind of a general range. The specifics get down to exactly what features you put on and what you bundle it with, but the kind of general pricing is just under $6,000 for the base level, $7,400 for Cardio Coach Plus, which is the VO2 test plus RMR, and $11,000 and change for the Cardio Coach CO2.
Okay, great. We do have 2 more questions here. The first one is, can anyone take a VO2 max test? And the second one is, how long are the tests?
You want to do that, Jody?
Yeah. So yes, anyone can do a VO2 max test. As far as if they should, before every test, we do recommend that our customers ask the proper questions to see if they feel comfortable with administering a max test, or if they should do a sub-max test, or if they shouldn't do a test at all. So obviously everyone is signing an informed consent, but we do also recommend that they fill out like an activity readiness questionnaire, something similar to like a PAR-Q, to see if there's any underlying conditions that make them feel uncomfortable with administering an exercise test. So that if they do have any underlying conditions, the next step would be to have their primary care physician fill out a medical clearance form saying that, yes, they are cleared to do a VO2 max test with you. So there is not an age range that this is the only age range that you can do VO2 max testing on. We have facilities that cater to elderly individuals. We have facilities that do it with cancer populations. We have facilities that do it with specifically elite athletes. We have facilities that do it with individuals that are specifically looking for fat loss. So there's a huge range of clients, and there's a huge age range within those clients that are participating in VO2 max test. It's just making sure that you ask the right questions beforehand to see if there's anything that would make you feel uncomfortable with administering a test. As far as the duration of the tests, it depends on if we are doing a protocol that's appropriate for the individual. So protocols will be tailored to fit the needs of the client. So if they are less conditioned, it will be a slower graded exercise test as far as the intensity that we're ramping them up at, versus an athlete where we may do a more intense ramp up with how we are increasing the intensity. So if we do a proper protocol that is appropriate for the individual, then ideally the test will last anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. But again, that is based on if we are able to do the proper protocol for the individual.
And Robin, I noticed a question come across that I'd like to answer. Ivan asked, point out the reference of your zoning process in exercise prescription. And that's a really good question, because our default is simply threshold training, where we use the thresholds as the cutoffs. But you can go into settings and you can choose any of the approved methods for choosing zones. So you can go percent VO2 max to set your zones. You could go percent off of AT. There's a half a dozen ways to design zones when you're doing zone training, and we allow you to set what method you'd like to use. So that is a good question, Ivan. And then somebody else, Jean, just asked, does KORR provide a template for the activity questionnaire and consent form? And yes, we do. We have that ready for you to use.
Great. Thank you, Jody and Julie. We do have one more question that we have time for before we wrap up here. The question is, what is the difference between anaerobic threshold and lactate threshold?
Sure. So essentially, anaerobic threshold and lactate threshold, a lot of times those terms are used interchangeably, but they're two different ways of measuring lactic acid building up in the blood. So two different ways of getting to the same place. The main difference is the method of measuring that. So doing it with an exercise test where you're doing it based off of the ventilation, that is a non-invasive method where it's recognizing your body is burning excess CO2 in response to the exponential increase of lactate accumulated in the blood, versus the invasive method, which is finger pricking during a graded exercise test, where you are actually measuring their blood lactate at each stage to find that spike where there is an exponential increase in lactate accumulation. So it's just two different ways of measuring the same thing. So it is two different terms, so it can be confusing, but it is pretty much the same thing.
Great. Thank you, Jody and Julie. We are just about out of time here. Do either of you have any closing remarks you'd like to make before we wrap up?
Only that I'm glad we had this opportunity and would love to talk more with anybody who has more questions. My contact information is on the screen. Or if you call me and you have something more technical, I can definitely transfer you to Jody, but you are welcome to seek more information. Additionally, our website is www.KORR.com, and it's full of a lot of information. So thank you for the opportunity. Oh, and last, in the slides are the references. For any technical data that we spoke of, here are references that you can go to learn more.
Okay, everyone, that is all the time we have for today. On behalf of IHRSA, I would like to thank all of our attendees for your participation, and I'd also like to thank Julie and Jody for sharing their expertise with us all today. At this time, I would like to direct your attention to the survey that just appeared on your screen. Please take a moment to complete this brief survey as it helps IHRSA in planning future webinars. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a wonderful day.